Similar to his Muslim travel ban, recognition of occupied Jerusalem al-Quds as Israel's capital and relocating the U.S. embassy there from Tel Aviv was among Donald Trump's presidential campaign promises. Now, less than a year into his troubled presidency, the Republican billionaire has decided to fulfill his anti-Palestinian campaign pledges, a decision which was postponed by Trump's predecessors.
Today, we finally acknowledge the obvious, that Jerusalem is Israel's capital. This is nothing more or less than a recognition of reality. It is also the right thing to do. It's something that has to be done. That is why, consistent with the Jerusalem Embassy Act, I am also directing the State Department to begin preparation to move the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
Under the Jerusalem Embassy Act signed in 1995, the U.S. government is required to move the American embassy to Jerusalem al-Quds or face financial penalties for the State Department. Every 6 months, however, presidents can sign a waiver to avoid these penalties on national security grounds. It's important to remember that there are no embassies in Jerusalem al-Quds, while there are 86 diplomatic missions in Tel Aviv. A recent opinion poll shows Trump's approval rating stands at only 35%. By making good on his campaign promises, Trump is seemingly trying to rally the support of his political base at the expense of the security of U.S. diplomats in Israel.
This is going to create a tremendous problem for the future. It's going to create another situation that we've got now. We're going to be millions of Palestinians saying in the future, that's our land, we want it back. So I think that's why the Jewish state was planted there in the first place, and why the Americans were so quick to recognize it, because they're putting it on a collision course with the native people of that part of the world.
Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem al-Quds as Israel's capital and his order on the embassy relocation process have earned him a firestorm of rebukes. Palestinian factions have condemned Trump's decisions, with the resistance movement Hamas threatening to launch a new intifada or uprising. The United Nations chief also opposed Trump's move, voicing concern about any action that jeopardizes the prospect of peace in the region. Iran and Turkey were also among many countries who vent their anger at the U.S. president's announcement. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu hailed as, quote, historic Trump's recognition of Jerusalem al-Quds as the regime's capital. Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is located in East Jerusalem al-Quds, is the third holiest site for Muslims. Israel, however, occupied the eastern part of the holy city following the 1967 Arab-Israeli War, and has ever since been violating international regulations by constructing settlement units there. Trump, who once fashioned himself as an ultimate deal-maker, has killed hopes for the achievement of a so-called two-state solution by making decisions that are heavily biased towards Israel.
Yes, the United States is very biased towards Israel. It's extremely super pro-Israel, and it's one of the main reasons that there's been no proper action on UN resolutions pertaining to Israel, because every time that someone tries to enforce those resolutions at the United Nations, guess what? The United States vetoes.
Saudi Arabia's King Salman has also warned Trump about the consequences of moving the U.S. embassy in Israel to Jerusalem al-Quds. But how sincere is the kingdom? Past experience shows Saudi Arabia has de facto been serving the interests of Israelis since the regime's creation by the West. In the Six-Day War in 1967, while several Arab countries took military action against Israel, Saudi Arabia opted not to take any action. Saudi Arabia is now the #1 arms importer from the US and the UK. If Riyadh had been against Tel Aviv, Washington and London would have never equipped the kingdom with their state-of-the-art weapons. Moreover, Saudi Arabia's support for anti-Damascus terrorists, its stance against Iran and the Lebanese resistance movement Hezbollah has driven both regimes closer. After all, no one expects the Saudi rulers who have been killing Muslims in neighboring Yemen to care about the plight of Muslims in occupied Palestine.